Oh, Commissioner Poon.
Hi,
How
hello.
are you, sir?
Are you Richard?
Yes, I am. Good evening. Good morning over there. Hello, welcome.
Yeah, good evening. How are you?
Good,
Nice
thank
to meet
you.
Well,
Nice
you're
to meet you too as well.
a very smart young man.
Well, thank you, sir.
It is also part of my job. I like to meet people coming from everywhere in the world. Actually, I got a lot of former colleagues now in Canada. You know,
Oh, really?
they formed the Hong Kong chapter. They are not serving as in uniform because mostly they have retired, but they still are serving the old aged people. I mean, such as deliver the meal to their home and so and so. They still meet very often.
Commissioner Poon, I introduced you to our two
Say.
superintendents.
Just call me Alfred. Much easier.
Alfred.
Yeah, because we are one world. Okay.
Thank you, Alfred. Appreciate that.
Also, I treat
please
my
call me
people
Richard as well.
Also like that, because if we have something to do and work together, we call the rank. Otherwise, we call the name. It's much more familiar, right?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Introduce you to our superintendent for Burnaby Cadet Division, Mr. Raymond Chow. Raymond, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, Alfred. Welcome.
Hi, Raymond.
Hi, Fun Ying. That's the only Chinese I know.
Have I met you before? Your face is very, very familiar to me.
Oh, last time I was in Hong Kong, I was
Yes?
3 years old.
What?
The
3
last
years
time I
ago
was
or
in
3
Hong
years old?
Kong, I was 3 year old.
Oh,
Yeah.
I joined the Brigade. Well, I joined the Brigade in 1968.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Hello.
Hello.
Mr. Hazadeh, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
For sure. Hi.
Hi.
Nice to meet
Hi.
you. I'm Farhang Ahadzadeh, and I'm the superintendent of Adult Division based in Burnaby. It's very nice to meet you virtually in person, as Mr. Liu mentioned. We are glad to have you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so glad to meet you too.
We're very much looking forward to, Alfred, to your talk in 2 weeks as well. And we're glad that you're able to join us this evening to hear our commissioner speak. If I can just get everyone to kind of go around the room here to introduce yourself to Alfred, who is Brigade Commissioner for Hong Kong's Brigade. For the first one, Tony Lowe, Mr. Lowe.
Hello, Commissioner. Welcome.
Hi, Mr. Lowe. How are you?
I'm the Leadership and Dress and Deportment Officer for the division.
Nice to meet you, Mr. Lowe. Yeah.
Garfield Huang, Miss Huang, and Miss Eva Ho.
Good evening, Commissioner.
Hi, good evening.
I'm Garfield. I'm the training officer of the Cadet Division.
I see. Yeah. Nice to meet you too.
Good evening,
Hello?
my name is Eva, and I'm
Eva?
an officer. Thank you.
I see.
To join us.
I'm so glad to
I
meet you all. Yeah.
I see from PHQ, Jane Short is there.
Good evening. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jane Short, and I'm the Director of Community Services and Fund Development at PHQ.
Wow.
It's an honor to meet you.
Yeah. Thank you. Nice to meet you. My name is Alfred. Call me Alfred, okay? Yeah.
Thank you, Alfred.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Vincent Liu.
Hi, good evening, Commissioner.
Hi, hello, Vincent. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm also coming from Hong Kong. I'm from
Yes?
Hong Kong, yes. So I still can speak Cantonese.
Well, you are most welcome to visit us anytime. After the COVID-19, okay? Yeah.
Sure, we do. Thank you.
Is that you, Celine, right?
Yes, hi. Good evening.
Hi. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Celine Fremant. I'm the Area Administration Officer for Lower Mainland Fraser Valley.
Oh, nice to meet you. I'm Alfred. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
You have a very strong manpower.
Oh, it's a team effort. Team effort, of course.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Yes, thank you so much. I actually look forward to meeting your team as well in the near future as well.
Yes, sure.
Melody Jacobson.
Melody, hi.
Hi there. I work with Jane. I'm the Senior Program and Project Coordinator at
Alfred
Services. Nice to meet you.
Yeah. Nice to meet you.
Corporal Yip, if you can introduce yourself, please.
Good evening, Commissioner Poon. I'm Corporal Alana Yip. Nice to meet you.
Hi. Me too. Glad to meet you. Just call me Alfred, okay? We are one family.
Corporal Sarah Butler.
Good evening, Commissioner. I'm Corporal Butler.
Nice to meet you too.
Corporal Jaylee Ma.
Good evening, Commissioner. My name is Corporal Jaylee Ma, and I'm very honored to be here today. And I'm very honored to be speaking to you too.
Yeah, me too.
I feel very special.
Yeah, thank you. Can I ask a question?
Yes, sure.
Richard, are your cadets all in a school base or still in the area where you belong? Because some cadets, they attach to adult division, right?
I'll ask Superintendent Chow to answer that question. Mr. Chow.
Yes, Alfred. All of our cadets are from the community and the surrounding areas. We currently in Vancouver, there is no cadet division attached to schools. We did have one in Burnaby North about 20 years ago, but we don't have any more.
I see. Then, so normally, how you can recruit the cadets?
They usually come to us before we have a long waiting list.
Yes.
Yeah, we do usually. Sometimes, if the numbers get low, we go to the malls or to the schools to promote. But we found that a lot of the kids come to us through word of mouth, and a lot of years we had to turn them away. And,
I see.
Yeah.
What's the age limit for your cadets now?
We accept them as young as 6 years old.
6 years old, yeah.
Yeah, and they have until 18 to remain in cadets. If they don't obtain a leadership role, then they will have to transfer to an adult division.
Yeah, I see. So that means you will have your officer direct from the cadets.
Yes, in most cases, yeah.
Yeah, I see.
But we found lately all my officers that we train so hard, they leave for university and then they're gone.
And then they say bye-bye.
Yeah.
That is why we make a special rank for the cadets. When they enter university, we give them a rank, officer cadet, with 1 pip. Mm-hmm. And when after they got the degree, they can take the officer course, then they will become an ambulance officer with 2 pips. So we try to keep them, to link with us, even if they are in the university. So that's why we give them a special rank, officer cadet. I think this is a good way to keep the cadets still, together with us.
Yes.
We found a very sharp decrease in the strength when they entered into university before. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it seems we have the same problem.
Yeah. Usually our members that stay till 19, they become officers, and some of them move up to 2 pip, and then some actually become superintendents of divisions, but they're still in university. Yeah. So do you rank the cadet after 18, put them in a post of cadet leader? The cadet leader is up to 19, and then the officers is after 19. So if they stay as a cadet, they can stay as a cadet leader until 19, and then after that, they will have to age out.
I see.
If they don't get promoted as an officer.
Yeah. Normally for us also, they stay up to 19, and then they have either entered into university, then they become an officer cadet. Otherwise, they are enforced to go to join the adult division, or they quit from the brigade. Mm-hmm. Because we cannot let the overage cadets stay with the young cadets there's an age gap already, right? They feel, this is not easy for them, to play or work together with the people at a younger age. But our cadets start from Form 1 till Form 6, because now we have 6 years for the secondary school. But we have also the St. John Junior from primary 3 up to primary 6, where we call them St. John Panda. They don't need to wear uniform. They just wear a T-shirt with a cap and then a black trousers. But our cadets, we are always in school base. But we have some open division in case some schools they have no cadets, where their parents like them to join the St. John Cadets. Then we create some open division for them to join. There's a lot of things that we can pass to each other. Then we can learn from you and get your idea and so and so. Do you practice drills?
Yes, we practice drill, and before COVID-19, for those who are interested in leadership opportunities, we do have a NCO leadership camp that they attend. It's a 5-day camp, 3 levels, and we teach them how to become a leader.
Because in Hong Kong, we are running on both first aid and drill, even more on first aid such as AED, etc. So all the members, no matter cadet or even the St. John Junior, they can perform drills very well. Because we parallel run everything.
Yes. We make that one of our primary focus is to be efficient and proficient at drill.
But I find even in UK, nowadays, they are not practicing on drills anymore. The same in New Zealand and also Australia.
I think that's the modernization of St. John. I think in the UK, New Zealand, they're transitioning into a more community-based program, something like the Boy Scouts.
I still can remember the time, long time ago, when I look at the Commissioner-in-Chief. They are all armies, Major General, Lieutenant General, but now all are university professors. So totally change. The change is good. I cannot prove now. Let us see.
Our purpose of these virtual events is really to promote exchange and create dialogue within our family here for St. John. And it's wonderful for you to take the time out to share some of your insights with all of us here this evening.
Me too.
I just got word from the Provincial Commissioner Valentine will be hopping on in about 6 minutes. Mr. De Leon,
good day, I'm here.
If you can play that short video that we have, that we could, it's Commissioner Poon, Alfred, sorry, can
my papa is not here.
That Alfred can have a chance to see a little bit of what we've done in the last year.
Yes.
Sure, just let me know when to roll.
Sure, go ahead, please. Thank you, Mr. De Leon.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Richard, good job, wonderful.
Thanks so much. A taste of what we've done in the last year, and a visual that you're able to see two of our World War II veterans, Peggy Lee and Dr. Putin Chak.
I see.
And we're grateful that they're doing well, they're healthy, and they're safe in their respective care homes. What's amazing is they're both in their late 90s now. Yeah, well, it's great that you've visited before, and we definitely would love to have you here when it's, again, safe to do so, and have a chance to see our division members and actually our brigade members as well. So,
yeah.
I want to say that our Provincial Commissioner, David Valentine, has joined us now, and we're grateful for his presence. Commissioner Valentine, sir, good to see you.
Good evening, everybody.
Hi, good evening. How are you, Commissioner?
I'm very good, thank you. And yourself, sir?
Yeah, my name is Alfred. I'm the Commissioner of Hong Kong. Yeah.
My pleasure
Nice
to meet you, Alfred. I'm David Valentine.
Hello, David. Yeah. You just call me Alfred, okay? We call our name each other. Oh, you had a wonderful place. Where's it? In Canada? Impossible, right? Now should be cold.
Yeah, it's where I was once.
Yeah.
It's my imaginary sunshine at the moment.
Yeah.
So I'm just cognizant of the time right now. I understand, Alfred, that you do need to leave a little earlier because I understand you have something on your schedule.
It's okay now. I changed my appointment afterward.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. So I'm glad that you'll be able to stay with us then. Perfect.
Nothing is more than important for me to meet you all.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. So with that, perhaps we can begin the program. I will let our officers prepare to begin. Okay, so we are ready to go. In 5, 4.
Good evening. I'm Farhang Ahadzadeh, Divisional Superintendent for Adult Division 304 based in Burnaby. Before we begin, I invite the officers to keep their headdress on, remain seated, and everyone to please keep your mics muted, especially when our guest is speaking. If you have any questions, please raise your digital hands, and thank you. I would like to now hand it over to our Honorary Brigade Division President, Mr. Liu, to say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. Ahadzadeh. Welcome to part 2 of our speaker series tonight. If you missed last week's talk by Minister Carla Cultro, you can see the event on our growing YouTube channel. Remember to click the subscribe button and hit that bell to be notified when we post new videos. As we begin, I would now like to recognize that our division is proudly based here in this diverse city of Burnaby, which is located in the ancestral and unceded homelands of the Coast Salish. We are grateful for the opportunity to present the speaker series on the shared territory tonight. Mr. Chow.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Raymond Chow, and I'm the Divisional Superintendent of St. John Ambulance Cadet Division 389, based here in Burnaby. Our next speaker of this 3-part series is with our very own Provincial Commissioner, David Valentine. Commissioner Valentine has achieved more than we will ever achieve in 4 lifetimes. His association with St. John Ambulance spans over 60 years when he joined as a youth member back in 1959. He currently resides in Victoria and has been overseeing the smooth running of the brigade throughout BC and the Yukon as our Provincial Commissioner since 2018. He is a devoted volunteer with Division 176 in Victoria, where he regularly attends public duties to serve his community. Currently, he serves as an Aide-de-Camp to the Lieutenant Governor of BC and often accompanies Her Honor Janet Austin on her official duties. He is also the current president of the Rock Solid Foundation, an organization that promotes anti-bullying in elementary and middle schools using the WITS philosophy: walk away, ignore, tell someone, seek help. Among his many accomplishments was the past superintendent of the PHSA, the BC Ambulance Service, liaison superintendent of the 2010 Olympic Planning Committee, and he used to strut around in a kilt as he is a retired major of the Canadian Scottish Regiment. Commissioner Valentine studied at UBC, the Justice Institute of BC, and Royal Roads University. For fun, Commissioner Valentine has been a referee for rugby from time to time. Commissioner, sir.
Thank you, Raymond. I wasn't sure who you were talking about there. All those things. Please sit easy. Can I share the screen, Richard? Okay. I'll try not to bore you too badly, and we'll try and get you out of here before breakfast tomorrow, if that's all right. So my discussion tonight is about the farm team. And that's a North American term, Alfred, that relates to the junior teams in baseball or hockey or football, where people are trained and get ready to move up to the big leagues. And today, when I talk about cadets, that's how I see them as it relates to St. John Ambulance, the farm team. I was born in Powell River on the 26th of November, 1947. I was kidnapped a couple of times before I was 5 and traveled across Canada by train on 3 separate occasions. Those were some pretty exciting, adventurous times for me, but they're a story for another time. And I've included a small map just so that everybody understands where Powell River is. Powell River at one time was the newsprint capital of the world. And most of the North American newspapers and some from abroad were printed on newsprint made in Powell River. Now, as we've moved forward into the electronic age, that's no longer the case. In fact, the mill there, instead of running 24/7, 365 days a year, now runs one shift of 6 hours, 5 days a week, because paper is really not the medium that we use for a lot of things anymore. Powell River got its start with St. John back in 1911, around 1910, 1911. A fellow by the name of George Clapp emigrated from England with his family, and he went to work for the Powell River Company, which was the name of the mill at that time. And one of the things that they wanted was to teach their mill workers first aid. And so that was one of the reasons he was actually hired. And they set up to teach the mill workers first aid, and that overflowed into the community. And that was the other thing that St. John did in those days. There were no duties that were in the community at that time. St. John was strictly, when it came to Canada, they were all about teaching first aid to businesses and local citizens to make them more able to care for themselves in a time when there weren't a lot of doctors, and a lot of the rural communities were pretty isolated from the major centers such as Vancouver and Victoria. When the First World War broke out, St. John ambulance went overseas, and they set up hospitals to treat the wounded allies and members of the British Empire, because at that time, Canada was not yet a defined country. We were still part of the empire. And that's a picture that was taken in the front lines, about 12 miles behind the German lines at that time. And if you notice one of the blankets there, you can see the St. John Cross actually on the blanket. And that was a hospital surgical ward for looking after fellows who had been wounded. And a lot of the volunteers that went overseas with St. John were women. A lot of them that were nurses. And there were also male volunteers, but more women than there were men at that time. A lot of the stretcher bearers that worked with various units during the war were musicians when they weren't carrying people from the front, from where they were wounded to the back. For example, my regiment, the Canadian Scottish, took its band with it overseas, and the band members were all stretcher bearers. That was their main job, and they played when they needed to inspire the troops to go over the top. In the Second World War, there were more medical units that had been formed in the interim. So when Canada went to war in World War II, we actually had medical units that were deployed. And St. John was in support. They were in support in Far East and locally in Canada. And we just recently honored two of our St. John members, Peggy Lee and Dr. Ho Chin Chuk, who were celebrating 75 years since the victory in the Pacific. And St. John has had some pretty significant contributions during the two world wars. So in 1947, post-World War II, I arrived. And I was the firstborn of two veterans who had served in England and France during the war. My mom and dad were both in the Canadian military. My dad was a motorcycle dispatch rider, and my mother was a CWAC who drove ambulances. And that was actually how she met my father. She was hauling his carcass from the forward medical station to the back for treatment. But you can see at that time, St. John in Canada was very regimented. This group of ladies were the Powell River St. John Corps of nurses. And it was a very structured environment. And that would have been in I believe that picture was taken in 1946. So in 1959, I was 12 years old. I had been involved in Air Cadets as a junior cadet and then a cadet. And I was waiting to join the Reserve Army Boy Soldier program. And I was advised by the recruiting people that if I had my first aid ticket, I would be a much more desirable candidate. And at that time, first aid was being taught by St. John. And the way to get your first aid training for free was to be a member of St. John. And we didn't have cadets in St. John cadets in Powell River in 1959. We had Air Cadets and Army Cadets, Air Cadets and Navy Cadets, Sea Cadets. But the youth group in St. John, we were called youth members. We wore white t-shirts and dark colored pants. And we met once a week. And most of the time was spent learning first aid and being trained in the first level. And at that time, we received a standard first aid, which was what the military desired to have us have when we joined as reservists. So I was issued a little cardboard box that had some bandages in it and some tincture of methylate and mercurochrome and Vaseline and a couple, I think I had in there were 4 smelling salt capsules that one could break and stick under somebody's nose if they were unconscious to see if it would bring them around. I had my own first aid book and I got my triangular bandage. And that bandage had every knot and way to tie a splint that you could think of. So if you forgot, all you had to do was look at your bandage and it would tell you how to do it. And I still have that bandage. I actually had 2 of them, and one is in the museum in Vancouver and the other one is in my possession. And I can remember the day I got that book, how excited I was to have this book, because I was going to be able to help people. And that was pretty exciting stuff. Roll around to 1963 and I'm now 16 and I'm able to join the Boy Soldier program. And we're still very active, not only as training to be infantry, because that's what the regiment was at that time, but we were also very active in first aid competitions. And we competed against other reserve units in British Columbia. And the picture that's in the foreground is a picture of a competition being overseen by a medical doctor and an army doctor who are going around to the various units and evaluating the candidates that are reacting to the scenarios that were presented. And I'm the one in the foreground putting the splint on my my best friend, who is got a broken arm and a broken leg. And in the background are a couple more of my friends that are treating the fellow that's sort of sitting there. He has got some bad lacerations. And in this particular competition, we actually placed 3rd in all of British Columbia amongst all the reserve units that were there at that time. It was pretty exciting. But our trainers were still St. John, even though we were in the Army. All our first aid training, and we had first aid training usually for an hour on Thursday nights. We paraded on Tuesdays and Thursdays and one Saturday a month. And all our first aid training at that time was provided by St. John Ambulance. And I never forgot learning the Holger-Nielsen method of artificial respiration. And that is a long way from what we do today with CPR. There were some alternatives if you couldn't lay the person on their front because they had been badly injured face-wise or chest-wise. But it was basically a way of compressing the chest from the back and then lifting the arms to get the chest to expand. And we did not do rescue breathing at that time. That had not yet been brought into the system. And the second 2 pages show the method of doing the same thing with a child and with a baby, as opposed to doing it with an adult. And we practiced that for, it seemed like forever, until you remember that picture we had a little earlier of all those nurses? Well, don't tell them I said so, but we used to call them battle axes because they were pretty harsh. And we either did what we were told or we paid the price. And that often had to do with practicing this particular Holger-Nielsen method on each other for an hour at a time just to get our attention. some more of the book, and the 2 pages on the right side is an appendix that was added, and it deals with oral resuscitation or mouth-to-mouth rescue breathing. And it was to be introduced at the Army level because the Army could afford the resuscitation dolls. Those dolls were hard to obtain and very expensive. And that was the only way they could be ensured of training properly to do the rescue breathing, was to do it on a doll, because you couldn't do it on a fellow person that you were training with. It just wasn't practical. And when I trained later to the EMR level, we had to run what they call the tape of 10 minutes of rescue breathing, which were compressions and mouth to mouth. And there was a tape inside the resuscitation doll that indicated whether or not you were doing it correctly. And if you didn't have a tape that was 10 minutes long, then you weren't considered competent enough to be licensed. 1965 came along, and I decided I liked the military. So I ran off and joined the Navy. I tried to join the Army, but at those particular times, the Army wasn't hiring. So I ended up at the recruiting center in Vancouver, and a sailor, as we were walking out the door, being told that the Army didn't need us, sort of whistling at us and asking us if we wanted to see the world. And if we did, let's join the Navy. And there we were, 6 hours later on the train to Cornwallis, Nova Scotia. At that time, I was trained to be an engineer, steam and diesel engineer machinist. So my first aid skills were no longer needed. And so at that time, I had a break from St. John, and I spent some time in the Navy, finished my training, traveled around the world a couple of times, and really got a chance to see a whole lot of Canada as a result of that time in. I actually was fortunate enough to be given one of the best jobs I ever had, which was playing soccer at the World's Fair in Montreal for 6 months and getting paid to do that. I never had a job that was so much fun. So in '69, I got out of the Navy and decided that I wanted to get my education. So I went back to university, and I went through a special program for shop teachers because I was a tradesman, and went to university for a year, which was the same as doing 2.5 years of university. And then we were licensed to teach. And during the time that I was teaching high school, most of it in Nanaimo, a little bit in Ladysmith, and some in Duncan, I again joined the Navy Reserve, and eventually, when I moved back to Victoria, the Army Reserve again. But during the time I was teaching, of course, there was no need for much in the way of first aid, other than I taught physical education part-time, so I had to have a rescue first aid in the event that one of my students got injured in a game. But basically it was school supported as opposed to St. John. After 10 years of teaching, I moved to Victoria and I became a police officer. And this time I got involved with St. John again. We did first aid training, basic first aid training at the Police Academy in Vancouver. And that was done by St. John people. In fact, the instructor that we had, her name was Yvonne Coveney, and she was quite a boisterous English lady who was able to keep 25 young constables and constablettes under her thumb without too much difficulty. I think most of us were absolutely petrified of her. And we did basic training in the first 3 years as part of our requirement to be police officers. And then in 1980, the government decided they were going to trial the first aid program, a first responder program in British Columbia to support the ambulance service. The ambulance service had gone from private to a provincial entity in 1974. And they were still pretty thin on the ground. So the idea was that because police officers are out there 24/7, they're not in bed sleeping until they get a call, that it would be a good fit for the police officers to be trained up as EMRs, emergency medical responders. And we were given these beautiful lime green jump kits that we kept in the trunk of our vehicles. And for 5 years, we were trained and active as members of St. John. They actually made us members of the Vancouver branch, and we wore the St. John patch on our uniform. And the picture on the left shows my membership card as a member of the Vancouver branch. And the reason for that was that the people in St. John Ambulance were the medical oversight committee for the first responder program. And that was in 1980. The picture in the middle is a constable who was in Victoria Police in 1905. And in 1905, they were still very affiliated with St. John. And you can see that he's wearing the St. John patch on his uniform. And there's a story that hit the local paper about them qualifying to be trained in first aid. So that relationship between Victoria Police and St. John has been going on since 1905, and it's still there. We still have some of the local police officers who have come and taken our course. It's no longer a requirement as part of their training, but they do it out of self-interest. In 1992, I'd had enough of bad guys, night shift in court, decided I wanted to challenge myself with something else, so I went and entered service in the provincial government, firstly as a coroner, and then a adult educator, and finally as a manager in the provincial ambulance service. And I was the first manager they had hired who was not a trained paramedic any longer. I still had my EMR license, but because I was in management, I wasn't allowed to use it. The vehicle that I drove was a supervisor vehicle, and it had a light bar and a siren, so I was expected to be emergency first aid trained, which meant I could respond if I was close until a crew got there, or if I came across an event, I could do the basic first aid until a crew would arrive. And at that time, I was appointed as a aide-de-camp to the lieutenant governor at that time, who was Iona Campagnola. She was the first woman lieutenant governor. And I was the first BC ambulance employee who had ever been made an aide-de-camp. And I served with Iona, and I'm currently still serving with Janet Austin, and she is my fourth lieutenant governor. So after my 5 years as a first responder, there was a break again in my involvement with St. John. In 2000, I was appointed, when I went to work for BC Ambulance, I was appointed as the liaison officer between BC Ambulance in Victoria and St. John Division 176 in Victoria. And we had, and the reason that happened is at that time, a lot of the box ambulances that we currently have, or the square boxes that everybody noticed that are very similar to the old ambulances, there was a program put in place, and we were purchasing these ambulances from BC Ambulance at the end of their lives for $1, sometimes a little more, but the the deal that was struck was that they would be equipped the same as a BC ambulance car. And in the event of a major disaster, we would turn those cars over to BC Ambulance, who would bring in extra crews, and they would be staffed, and they would have extra vehicles on the road because we wouldn't have the training level that the paramedics had. And of course, that came to an end when BC Ambulance became EHSA. That contract expired and it wasn't renewed. So the ambulance service went from being a board overseen outside of government to becoming part of the health ministry again. In 2006, I became a uniform member again and was a member of Div 176. I was a member of the Brigade Executive Committee. So the Brigade Executive Committee at that time was responsible for overseeing how monies were spent, because the divisions were separated from headquarters in fundraising. Money that was raised by the division was spent by the division. And the grants that came from gaming and in the province were applied for by each division. So the Brigade Executive Committees, the BECs, were the oversight for the spending of that money. And then in 2017, we got rid of the BEC, we centralized the fundraising, and each of the divisions became part, or the BACs became the CEE, Community Executive Engagement Committee, to sort of assist divisions for localized fundraising and media relations and things like that. In 2011, I was appointed the Deputy Area Commissioner for Vancouver Island. And I was at that time became Aide-de-Camp wearing a St. John uniform as I had retired from BC Ambulance. In 2016, I was promoted as the Vancouver Island Commissioner. And in 2018, I was promoted to Commissioner for the province, BC and the Yukon. I'm still currently a serving member of Division 176, and I'm also a member of the CEE, but I took a leave of absence because I felt there was conflict of interest if I stayed in that role while being the commissioner. And just last month, I was voted in as a member of the St. John Ambulance Board. Honors and awards that I've received, I've been very fortunate. I was invested in the Order of St. John. I went to Ottawa for that. That was in 2014. And in 2018, I was promoted to the grade of officer in the order. My service with the Armed Forces spanned 39 and a half years of regular and reserve time. So I received the Canadian Forces Decoration and 2 rosettes, which indicates my years of service. I was also presented with the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Medal for my work with Lieutenant Governor in the years up to the Queen's Diamond Jubilee. And I guess 3 years ago, I received the Vice Regal Commendation from Lieutenant Governor Guichon, received my long service medal from the police. I was made a Knight Chevalier in the Order of St. George, and I received an Aboriginal Veterans Award for work with them, a PVOT in 2014, and a Commissioner's Letter of Thanks for volunteering at the Prince George Winter Games. In a few pictures I thought I'd throw up there with the one on the top left is me receiving my Order of St. John by the Chancellor in the Senate House in Parliament. And I have to tell you, I have been involved with speaking publicly and in front of classrooms my whole life. And we had a 25-minute briefing before this took place. And we were sitting in the Senate chamber, my name was called, and I remember stepping into the aisle, and I remember sitting down. And everything in between that was an absolute blank. I was in such awe. I'm so overwhelmed with being given such an honor that I think my memory just collapsed on me. The picture, there's a picture of myself with Lieutenant Governor Janet Austin, a group of the 176 volunteers and a couple of cadets where we were going to an RCMP funeral. And picture of one of the mascots at the Prince George Games where I worked on Ski Hill as a volunteer, and a couple of remembrance days with members of the ambulance service that I served with. My change of command. I was very fortunate in 2017. I was part of a team called Vimy Flight, and we worked for 9 years to put this together, and we went to Vimy to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the victory at Vimy by Canadian troops in World War I. And we took with us 7 biplane replicas to refly the flight that flew around the monument in 1936 when the monument was dedicated. And I was there as a security officer, as a pilot, and as a medical officer, as a member of St. John. And I have to tell you, that was one of the most exciting things I've ever had the privilege to be part of in my life. And the people in France were so overwhelmingly friendly to us. In fact, they were so impressed with what we did on the 100th anniversary as they brought us back a year later for 2 weeks, and they paid for everything. They wanted us to come back so we could actually get into the communities and meet them, because the time we were there for the 100th anniversary was mostly spent prepping and practicing and ready for the day off. So the plane that I'm sitting in is a SE-5A. There's actually a Canadian coin with that plane on it. And the one on the right is a Newport 11 7/8 scale. And the fellow on my right is the fellow who started the Vimy flight. So that was a very exciting time. As I said, I'm still very active with St. John Div 176. Some more of the events that the division has been involved with that I've been at. And the picture at the bottom is was a BOT2 course that I taught with Herman Ho in Victoria. And the gentleman on the right with the necktie is now the current chair of the St. John board, David Hodgins. I have to tell you, I love my involvement with St. John as much today as I did in 1959. And when I first joined, I did it because of selfishness. I wanted to get that certificate so I could join the Army. I never thought that I would be so overwhelmed throughout my life of that beginning. And I can tell you there's been a few times when I have been someplace where somebody has collapsed and has needed help, and there is nothing more rewarding than knowing that you can do something about it. And that's what I say to all of you cadets. You will be able to, with confidence, respond when somebody needs your help. And I have been so many times come upon events where people are running around like chickens with their heads cut off because they don't know what to do. Somebody is having a heart attack, somebody has drowned, and they have no training, and they're absolutely beside themselves because they don't know what to do to help. And being able to do what you have to do to try and help that person is what it's all about. And I firmly believe that our youth program and our cadet program is quite a bit different than it is in Ontario. And in fact, just recently, Quebec has contacted us because their program, they would like to get back into the cadet side. And they are seeking guidance from our cadet commissioner to see how they can get back into the cadet system from where they are now. But for you cadets, and for those of you that work with the cadets, that's our farm club. Some of us are getting a little long in the tooth. And if you're not sure what that means, it means we're getting old. And we need somebody to throw the torch to, somebody to continue. And that's what our farm clubs are all about. And I'm sure that if I could be here in another 50 years, some of the faces that are on that Zoom call are going to be sitting in my chair, because we're about service. And it's a volunteer is a person who does something without ever expecting to get anything for it. And that's one of the challenges, is that we've had people who have this self-entitlement, as I call it. They think because they volunteered that they are entitled to get something. And a true volunteer, that's not what it's about. And your division here in Burnaby, I can't tell you how proud I am to be associated with you. Because you guys have stepped outside the box. You think outside the box. And Richard, I know a lot of that's coming from you and your leadership team there. When I, participated in the OneStJohn and the Victory in the Pacific Remembrance and Remembrance Day, I went away from my computer with a warm glow, thinking, we are going to survive this pandemic because we have got people like yourselves that are moving forward in a time when everybody else is spinning their wheels. So I say to you, pro fide, pro utilitate hominum. Our motto, that's what it's about. OneStJohn. Thank you. Now, if anybody has any questions, I will do my best to try and answer them without talking for another week.
Wasn't that an incredible presentation? I had to make a comment about your motorcycle though too, as well. That was a cool photo of you on that police motorcycle. I thought that was a very cool shot of you. So on behalf of Superintendent Chow, Superintendent AdeC, our Burnaby Division organizing team members, thank you, Commissioner Valentine, for sharing your insights and inspiration at St. John Ambulance, sir. Really appreciate it. I believe, Mr. Chow, we have the questions.
Yes, Commissioner Valentine, that was very inspiring, and it's been very, it's an honor. I am lost for words. So you were, like I said earlier on, you have achieved more in your lifetime than we will ever achieve in 4 of ours. So I congratulate you. We move to some quick questions by some of our cadets, because I think they have some questions they would like to ask you.
Ask away and see if you can stump the old guy.
Good evening, Commissioner Valentine. My name is Corporal Yip, and I would like to ask if you've ever participated in NCLDP as a candidate or taught, and what are some major changes you see from before and how it runs now?
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of that. Participated as?
At NCOLDP.
No, I have not. The plan was for me to attend one of them, and unfortunately, when I was to come over, the ferry stopped running because of high wind, so I never got over. I have participated in NCO training in the military, but not in St. John. But I do teach the BOT courses which is a leadership course for officers in St. John. And what I see the difference being, other than the fact that now we're uniformed, the progression in media awareness is huge. You know, we in my time as a teenager, we had a newspaper, and we had 3, sometimes 4 channels on television. News on television in those days was for 10 minutes once a day. It was about, everything else was about TV shows. And so information didn't get shared readily and very quickly. So if there was, for example, if there was a new directive coming from St. John headquarters, by the time it got to Powell River, where I was, it could be 3 or 4 weeks, because the mail at that time used to come up by the CPR boats. So there'd be a mail delivery every 2 days. And by the time it got sorted and put into the mailboxes around the town where people could go and pick it up, there was always a delay in everything. So that's the real major difference I see now, is that there is so much available to youth today in information that just wasn't there when I was a kid.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Commissioner Valentine. My name is Corporal Ma, and my question for you is, what inspired / motivated you to continue down this path of St. John and eventually become the Provincial Commissioner?
Well, I made friends in St. John since my first involvement. And some of those friends have left this world now. All the people that were part of St. John when I was a kid, of course, have all passed on. And all the friends that I have currently in St. John, not only do I have the pleasure of working with them, but we're friends outside. So what St. John has given me is, it's given me a group of like-minded friends that we enjoy doing the same thing. And you know, when we do duties together and we participate in things like the Sandwich Fall Fair or the classic boat shows, I brought my leadership team together in Vancouver. We all went down and worked at Rogers Arena. I've gone over and have taken my turn at the baseball park. You get a chance to see so many people and answer a question here. My job is to mentor. The day that I started this job, my job was to find my replacement. That's my only job, to make changes, to try and make it better, and to find somebody that's going to take over for me and do some succession planning. And that's what makes a division like you have so efficient, is that you've got a group of great young people that have all stepped up and prepared to take on leadership pieces. And when I look at the faces and I read about some of the things you're doing, you've got DSs that are going to be there for another 10, 15, 20 years. And I'm sure that as you move through the system and take on officer positions and move up, you're going to be looking for people to come behind you and do the same thing. And that's what it's about for me.
Thank you.
Hello, good evening, Commissioner Valentine. I am Corporal Butler, and my question for you is, moving forward, what are some of the things you hope to achieve as Provincial Commissioner?
Well, as I said, since I started on day one, is building a team that can take over when I leave, or if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, I'm confident that I have a team of area commissioners and PHQ members that are more than capable of taking over my role. For me, I wanted to see an improvement in communication. I'll tell you a little story. Way back when I was a policeman, the RCMP control a system, it's called CPIC, it's Canadian Police Information Computer System. And they put a bulletin out every day, and on the top of that bulletin was a sign that said, information to be useful must be shared. But they wouldn't share it, because they would only share it with other RCMP detachments. They wouldn't share it with municipal police officers or provincial police officers. Well, the same holds true here. If I have a meeting with my team and no information gets down to the DSs of the divisions, who can then share it with the members, they're in a vacuum. So that's one of the things I've tried to do, is to get my team to pass the information down so that the people that are at the bottom know exactly what's going on. There's nothing that makes people more frustrated than being in the dark. And the other thing that I'm trying to promote is the efficient use of chain of command. In the past, our organization has had times when, if you didn't like the answer I gave you, somebody would make a phone call and go around behind and try and find another way to get it done. And there's still a bit of that goes on. And in the chain of command, when it works properly, is that it goes up the chain of command and it comes back down the same way. And the same thing holds true for discipline. If there's a problem at the bottom end and it isn't dealt with, then it rolls down. But if somebody is doing a really good job at the bottom, the top needs to be aware of it. So that information needs to get up to the top, but it needs to get up through the chain of command so that we have, everybody knows who they report to, what goes next, and they don't start trying to do the famous football and run around. And of course, the last thing that I want to do is get us through this pandemic so we can get back to doing things that we used to do. We may have to do them a little differently, but we need to survive this pandemic. And you guys I've got a couple of divisions, and you're one of them that are setting the tone. So well done, you all. In the military, we have a term called Bravo Zulu, which means well done. And so to your division, adult and cadets, I say Bravo Zulu.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Commissioner. I also have a question, and I'm squad leader you. So my question is, what inspired you to continue being involved with St. John throughout all your steps in career in all different types of roles?
Well, it's all, I keep coming back to St. John because I like it. And I continue to keep my AMFR qualifications up because I like helping out. And when I go and do a duty, because my qualifications are current and my contacts, and I'm working with people that I trust and that I like, why not? You know, I could, how many of you like ice cream? Just give me a quick hand. So, if you like ice cream, do you eat more? Or if you like ice cream, do you say, no, I'm going to have cod liver oil instead? I like ice cream. I like St. John. So why not continue with something that I like? It brings me pleasure. And I have got some long-term really good friends in St. John. And I have got all of you people, because you're all part of the team that I belong to. And when I look through this group of young folks, I am inspired. You make all the stuff that goes with being the commissioner, just all the stuff that I don't like doing, you make that really good because I've got you to look forward to. And one of these days, we actually will get a chance to meet, not just on a computer screen, because the first division I'm going to visit when this is over is going to be Burnaby, I can tell you that.
Thank you for inspirational words.
Good afternoon, Commissioner Valentine. I am Squad Leader Huang. So you told us about your involvement with St. John Ambulance and also a lot of other activities that you're involved with. So my question is, how do you manage all the time between SJ and the other activities?
Time management is a wonderful thing. I guess it's not much different than when you go to school and you're taking 5 subjects and you got friends, you got 5 subjects, you got family, and you got chores, and you always find ways. And sometimes you get a little counseling from home on which ones are going to be priorities. That's how I look at it. I prioritize the things that I'm going to do, and there are things that have to be done now, and there are things that can get done in a little while. When you enjoy doing things, if the things that you're doing you really enjoy, it's really easy to find time to do them. You just have to make sure you don't overcommit and you don't get yourself in the position where you do something that you like so much you forget about the other one. That's the big challenge, time management. That help?
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioner Valentine. I'm Squad Leader Chen. I'd like to ask, was there a significant time or place where you were thankful that you volunteered?
Yes. Yeah, there's been a couple occasions where I have, one was while riding my motorcycle. I do a lot of motorcycle riding, a lot of long distance motorcycle riding. I was traveling across the United States and I came upon a motorcycle crash, and I was able to stabilize and keep a young fellow alive until we could get an ambulance there to get him to a hospital. And it was because I had the training and I knew what to do. And I happened to be in the right place at the right time. And those are the kinds of memories that make you feel good. Because if I'd have been 10 minutes later, or if I'd arrived and didn't know what to do, that outcome could have been different. But when you get a positive outcome, even, we do the Sandwich Ball Fair here in Victoria every year, and 90% of our patient contacts are bee stings. And you make somebody feel better, and they go away and they thank you. That's what it's all about. That's for a true volunteer. That's the only reward you need, is somebody to acknowledge that you've helped them.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioner Valentine. My name is Squad Leader Louis. So I was just wondering, as a cadet, did you think you would become the superintendent of the BC Ambulance Service one day?
I did not. When I looked at the people that were in charge when I joined, they scared me. And when I first joined, I wasn't looking at St. John as a lifelong experience. I was selfish when I joined because I wanted to have that first aid training. And even though they scared me, they taught me a lot. And I went away from that, and then you get opportunities to put that training to use. And then another opportunity crops up and you try something else. And like I say, I keep coming back to St. John because it's always been a positive experience for me.
Thank you for your response, and thank you for being such an inspiration.
Thank you.
Yes, do we have any further questions for Commissioner Valentine?
I know one of the written ones, I just noticed somebody asked, what does an aide-de-camp do and how does one become one? So an aide-de-camp is a actually defined title. It's each of the lieutenant governors and the governors general and all senior officers in the military, general grade ranks and above, are entitled to have an aide. And an aide-de-camp in the old days, they used to call them batmen. And they basically managed the officer. They laid out his uniform, they shined his shoes, they did all those kinds of menial tasks. And they also, in the cavalry days, they fed their horses and they groomed them and all the rest of it. But an aide-de-camp in this day and age, we're there to ensure that the lieutenant governor is safe and that protocol is followed. In other words, make sure that the proper flags are displayed, make sure that the speaking order is correct, make sure that there's nobody monopolizing their time when we're in a large setting. And then in the event that there is an election has been called or there is media that wants to talk to the lieutenant governor, our job is to make sure that they understand, firstly, that the lieutenant governor is apolitical, and at election time we don't do any events that would have any politicians speak, because we don't want it to appear that she is favoring one over another. And basically we keep track of any gifts that are given and categorize them, and because when those gifts get back to Government House, they all have to be categorized and then letters sent to the donors, and depending on the value of the gift, whether it gets put in archives or whether it's displayed in the house someplace. To become an aide-de-camp, St. John had three. Myself, Mr. Herman Ho, who is the former commissioner, and former deputy cadet commissioner. And she took a leave of absence for a few months when she had her baby, but she's back on the books now. Herman has just retired, so there's just the two of us at the moment. And the way that one becomes a aide-de-camp is if there's a vacancy, the organization is asked to put somebody forward, and that would be done by the commissioner or the deputy commissioner, one of the senior leadership team. If they saw there was a vacancy, they would look for somebody that is usually in an officer position, who wears the uniform well and is always well turned out. Because when you're with the lieutenant governor, you're representing St. John Ambulance, and we travel. I mean, I've traveled the whole province with the 4 lieutenant governors I've served. I have been with royalty. I have been in functions right around the province. And when I'm on stage with the lieutenant governor, I'm wearing a St. John uniform. So everybody is looking at her, thinking that I'm the lieutenant governor. That's one of the jokes I tell quite frequently. because I'm the one that's wearing all the bling. In fact, there's two things we wear that indicate our office. One is a royal cipher, which I don't know if you can see in this, is the pin that I have here. And the other are aiguillettes. And that's the braided cord that hangs off my shoulder. If it's royalty, which the lieutenant governors and the GG they are representatives of the Queen, it's worn on the right side, right for royal. And if it's a military one, then it's worn on the left. And they are, if you want a history lesson, aiguillettes were horse hobbles. So the old Aide-de-Camps used to have these, they were loops that they hung over their shoulder, and when they went up to the front for the general to have a look and see who was being shot at, rather than have the horse scared off by the gunfire, the aide would put the loops around the horse's forelocks, and the two spikes were driven into the ground to keep the horse from shying away. And somehow that is carried on into modern day. So we wear aiguillettes, which have two spikes and a set of cords that are looped. And we don't use them for that any longer because the spikes are made of soft tin and they wouldn't stick in the dirt worth a darn. And we don't have horses, but that's sort of where it came from. So when I'm with the lieutenant governor, or if I'm at an event that he or she is at, then I wear the aiguillettes, and I always wear the royal cipher on my uniform, which indicates that I am an aide-de-camp. And it also is recognized by the Honors and Award System Canada that I can have the letters ADEC after my name as a post-nominal. It's a recognized position.
Thank you, Commissioner. Actually, Miss Christina Hong, she was from Division 389, which is the Burnaby Division. So
I didn't know that. Well,
yes,
I shall remind her.
Yes. All right. Anyone else with some questions?
I have a question. Hi, Commissioner Valentine. It's Corporal Ma again. I was wondering about, I also play soccer, and I heard earlier that you mentioned that you also played professional soccer, I believe. So I was wondering how that was like.
Well, it was pretty exciting. You imagine being at the World's Fair and your only job all day long is to play a game of soccer every second day. And to be in Montreal, and I played soccer and I played rugby professionally, and then I've been refereeing internationally rugby for the last 25 years. And I only retired this year because I blew my knee out in a game. I'm waiting for it to be repaired, so maybe next year I'll get back at it. But it's exciting. Just think about it. Instead of going to work and sitting behind a desk and doing paperwork, you run around the soccer field doing something you love to do, and they're paying you for it. It's like being a policeman. You saw my motorcycle. Can you imagine somebody is paying you to ride a motorcycle all day long? They're paying for all the gas and oil. Like, all I have to do is get on it and ride it. Best job ever.
Thank you. I'll definitely consider that as a job.
Lots of opportunities there.
Hello, Commissioner Valentine. It's Corporal Alana Yip again. I'm just wondering if you've noticed a change in regards to the discipline level among youth members. And if you have, how is it different from when you were a youth member in St. John?
Well, I think it's sort of, the difference is the fact that we have gone from a very strict society to a much more open society. When I when I mentioned these people that were running St. John when I was a kid being scary, I was a kid, and we were expected to do as we were told, and if not, there were consequences. And in those days, corporal punishment was allowed. Getting the strap was what you got when you didn't behave. And I was very good at understanding that because I spent a lot of time in the principal's office with my hands out getting my share of it. And my parents, and when I grew up in my home, my parents were the same way. They had come through a system that allowed for corporal punishment. And if I didn't behave, then I was disciplined. But as we've moved forward, we've sort of gone from the authoritarian discipline to much more Adlerian. And Adler is a psychologist that said that the punishment needs to fit the crime. So you don't wail on somebody because they didn't eat all their peas at the kitchen table. You know, the proper way is if they didn't eat their peas, they don't get any dessert. And we have migrated from a society where physical discipline was permitted to a society now where it's not. Bullying took place in school when I went to school. It's not acceptable now. But in those days, nobody paid any attention to it. So as we've gone through, I've noticed the same thing in the cadet system and in the military. We have migrated to a more open and non-confrontational, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's really hard for some of the old people, or the old dogs, as I'll call them, to understand that, you know, people don't do things now just because you say so. There has to be a reason for it. And that was the hardest thing when we were training soldiers to go to Afghanistan. When you tell them, you know, you're training as an infantry guy and you take them out and you do an exercise, and when you tell them to hit the ground, it's not the time to have a debate, because hitting the ground may be what keeps you alive. In a training session in the classroom, that's the time for the debate. Well, why? Why should I hit the ground when you tell me? The same holds true in the cadet system today. I want you to do something, and if you don't do it, I'm screaming at you. Well, the more I scream, the less you hear. So we have to adapt and work at it in a different light. And I think it's good. You know, I've always, one of the comments I would make, I go to the armories on a Friday night when I was still active in the militia, and the cadets would parade Friday night, and you'd hear an awful lot of hollering. Not a lot of talking, a lot of hollering. And it's a behavior that's learned, because when the guys are doing the hollering now, we're junior cadets, somebody was hollering at them. So it perpetrates itself. And it takes somebody along the way has to stop the yelling and do more of the talking. And I'm not talking about yelling when we're doing drill, because the yelling during drill is so that everybody can hear. But the yelling just for the sake of yelling doesn't get an awful lot of results. But it takes time for somebody to say, okay, yeah, I'm not going to yell, I'm going to talk. And then that'll sort of move it forward, and more people will now talk instead of yelling, and we change the cycle. And that's the biggest difference you can see in the cadet organization now, is that your organization here is a perfect example of people that are prepared to speak up and ask questions. There were times, I mean, I remember my time as an air cadet, you didn't open your mouth. but we were being overseen by people who had just come back from the war. So they were still very much into the do as I say because I say so. No, you don't get to ask that question. So I think we're in a much better place. And the organization that I've been working on, and one of the founders of, called Rock Solid, which is now the WITS Foundation, we've been trying to get anti-bullying going on in the schools for the last 24 years now. And we've got evidence to prove it's working. That's sort of the way the cadet system has gone. There's an awful lot more talking going on than there is yelling and screaming. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Answer that question.
Thank you, Commissioner. We have one last question.
Okay.
Good evening, Commissioner. I'm Garfield, the training officer of the Cadet Division. Please allow me to ask you a sweet questions. What's your favorite ice cream?
Chocolate.
Got you. Thank you.
Double chocolate, triple chocolate.
That's good. Thank you. Now, we're going to have a special presentation by Commissioner Valentine, who would like to recognize some members for their support and efforts in producing these video productions. Mr. Liu, would you like to read out the names and what will they be receiving?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chow. Absolutely. It takes a village to make things happen. And the following members help keep things afloat at our first 3 virtual events during the last few months. We just heard Commissioner Valentine's very kind words a few moments ago about our division. And indeed, no one expects anything. But we thought this would be a perfect time to present a few things to some of them. And they will be receiving a personal letter from Provincial Commissioner Valentine and his coin. We ask that you hold your applause until the end, or share your thumbs up until the end after the list of the names have been read. But just to show you what the coin looks like, I think I can do that here. It's a very beautiful coin. Commissioner Valentine, would you want to say anything before we present the names? Would you like to say something?
No, I've been talking a long time. They don't want to hear me any longer. I want to thank those of you who are receiving my coin. I want to thank you for thinking outside the box and working outside the box and making this division so dear to my heart. Thank you. It's my little token to thank you.
It is sincerely appreciated, sir. Thank you so much. Again, please, we ask that you all hold your applause or your digital thumbs up after we finish reading the names. Thank you so much. So let's begin. Feels like this is going to be the Oscars here. For hosting the OneStJohn Celebrating Resilience Evening on June 29th, 2020. Divisional Superintendent 389C, Raymond M. Chow. Divisional Training Officer, Burnaby 389C at the time, Christina Kacharova. Mr. Ian DeLeon, Advanced Topics and Training. Ms. Selena Kung. Mr. Anthony Lowe, NCO Development, Dress and Department. Ms. Sari Lin, Community Services Coordinator. Doris Lin, Divisional Secretary PVO. Mr. Colin Sham, Divisional Administration Officer. Richard N. Liu, Honorary Brigade Division President. For hosting the World War II commemoration 75th anniversary of Victory in the Pacific Day on September 2nd, 2020. Ms. Celine Froment, 304 Superintendent, recently promoted to LM Area Admin Officer. Ms. Garfield Huang, current Divisional Training Officer, Burnaby Division 389C. Miss Eva Ho, Burnaby Division 304. Miss Corporal Sarah Butler, Cadet, Burnaby Division 389C. Cadet Charlotte Butler of Burnaby Division 389C. Corporal Jaylee Ma of Burnaby Division 389C. And for November 11th, Remembrance Day, Mr. Farhang Ahazadeh, current Superintendent of Division 304, Burnaby Division, and Corporal Alana Yip, NCO, Burnaby Division 389C. Thank you all for stepping up to the plate. Congratulations. A thumbs up for Commissioner Valentine, everyone. Let's give him a big thumbs up here. There we go. All right, nice.
Yes, congratulations to all who received the recognition tonight. I'm sure that it's going to be a very special honor for you. This concludes our evening. Please stay tuned for Commissioner Poon, who will be joining us from Hong Kong in 2 weeks. Mr. Liu has an update on our December speaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chow. As mentioned last week, our final speaker series event of the year is in 2 weeks on December 7th with Hong Kong's St. John Ambulance Brigade Commissioner, Mr. Alfred Poon, who will be our special guest speaker, as well as members of their Hong Kong Brigade Youth Command. This will be an informative and wonderful way to close out our year by building bridges.
Indeed, very exciting news for our brigade and Burnaby Division. Stay tuned. In the meantime, thank you all for joining us this evening. Wishing you all a wonderful week ahead. OneStJohn.
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 OneStJohn.